looks like we are good to go. I call the Planning and Zoning meeting of February 16th to order. Would you please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. If we have any alternates in the room, if you could please join us on the stand here and sit next to Mr. Diaz over here. And may we have a roll call, please?
Jim Harris, Donald Bergen,
Here.
Dan McGowan,
Here.
Chad Nelson,
Here.
Susanna Ballard, Matthew Mitchell, Sam Levin, Gabrielle Medley,
Here.
and David Diaz.
Here. All right, correspondence and announcements. Luke, could you give us that?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. As is obvious, it may be obvious too that we have some new members. Of course, we have Susanna Ballard was recently appointed by the City Council from an alternate member to a full-time member of the Planning Commission. Unfortunately, she's not able to make it today, but she is a full member now, so she'll be on the panel on the board next meeting. Paul Lair was appointed an alternate. Paul's been, Paul, would you mind giving a little background on your history here, if you don't mind, if I impose upon you there?
Sure. Okay. Right. So Paul Havasu is home for. Is this on?
You got to push the button. Push the button. Go ahead.
There we go. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, really, Havasu's been home for us for since at least 1993, if not earlier. This is my third time serving on the Planning Commission. And so the first time was in the 90s, and then I think in 2005, and now. And so it's great to be back, and just love contributing to the community in this way. Thank you.
Good.
Thank you, Mr. Lear.
And we have another alternate that could join us as well, Mr. Mitchell. If you could sit next to Mr. Lair over here, or over here, either empty spot. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman, again. Update on what happened at the last City Council meeting. They, per your recommendation on the Buena Vista Plan Development Rezone, where you recommended denial 6-0, City Council also did not end up approving that. They ended up denying that request. The Marina View Plan Development, the Catholic Church Plan Development, and the Victoria Farms Rezone were all approved by the City Council at that meeting. That concludes staff's comments. Not open to any more questions, but I am open to questions if you like to have any questions to ask. Thank you.
Any questions of staff? Okay, hearing none. Minutes of the previous meeting. Are there any additions, deletions, or corrections? Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I motion to approve them.
I second the motion.
Let's call for the vote.
Paul Lair, I'm going to have to get verbal votes on you on every item.
Okay, yes.
Thank you.
We're having a little bit of technical difficulties, so if you don't mind, I appreciate your
Bear with
patience.
us.
Thank you.
Can we add Jim Harris to the roll call?
I think due to our technical difficulties right now, if you don't mind, we'll do a voice roll call on this. And then maybe we can take a short break to just make sure everything's working and start up again, if that is okay with the commission.
Okay.
Donald Bergen.
Here.
Yes or no? On the minutes.
I thought we did that already. Okay.
It's not working.
Yeah, yes. Yes.
David Diaz.
Yes.
Gabrielle Medley.
Yes.
Dan McGowan.
Yes.
Chad Nelson.
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0. Matthew Mitchell, sorry.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Mr. Morris, I have a request. I'll have to step down for the second item. So could we have Mr. Harris take my place and maybe change the order? Is that possible?
Well, I think we can certainly have a change since Mr. Harris is here. I think you can certainly step down as chair and have Mr. Harris take over as chair. And then one of the alternates would then, I would presume, need to step down, and then you would take the alternate's place.
Okay, so Mr. Mitchell will trade spots. Mr. Harris, you're up.
Musical chairs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good morning.
Good morning. Better late than never, huh?
Yeah.
And Mr. Harris, we are just past the excuse me, my comments. Thank you.
So we're on the second item now, 22-3176.
We're on public hearing item number 1.
Oh, we haven't done anything yet?
We just got through correspondence announcements, and then the minutes just got approved.
Okay, all right. Well, then let's go ahead and start the formal meeting. Let me first start by saying that this is a public hearing and there is a structured order to this proceeding. The city staff will present each item. There will be time for the commission to ask questions of the staff, and then the applicant will have the opportunity to present their case to the commission. That being done, we will then open the proceeding to the public for their questions and input. I would ask that anyone of the public that wishes to speak limit their trips to the podium and microphone to one only. Keep all comments to less than 3 minutes, and to stay on point and not discuss subject matter that is not pertinent to the decision being considered here today. After public testimony is taken, I will then close the public hearing and bring the motion back to the table for city staff's recommendation, discussion amongst the commission, and eventually a motion to approve or disapprove. The first item on today's agenda is item number ID 22-3175. It's a request for a preliminary subdivision plat for the Ivy Court Estates for 1740 Bahama Avenue, tract 115, block 4, lot 4, creating a 13-unit residential condominium subdivision in the multiple family development RM district. Mr. Morris, your presentation, please.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, thank you very much. The subject property is located on Bahama Avenue, just east of Lake Havasu Avenue North. The site is currently home of an existing residence that will be incorporated into Lot 4 of the proposed subdivision. The properties to the west and north and south are developed as multiple family uses and a combination of the multiple family and vacant lots. The property to the south across the wash are developed with single-family residential units. The property zoning is currently RM, multiple family. The properties to the west, north, and south are also zoned RM. Again, across Bahama Avenue, it's zoned light industrial, and then across the wash to the south, it's zoned residential single-family. So here's the proposed preliminary plat map. Lot number 6 is home to the existing structure on the property, and it's going to be incorporated within the boundaries of lot number 6. The proposed plat will allow the units to be individually owned as part of an association for the common portions. You'll see there's the driveway area, the access way, some parking. There's some other amenities part of the project. There are going to be a total of 12 residential lots with attached garages, and parcel A will be the street, and my understanding is lot number 7 here will be common element with some private amenities for the subdivision. The internal street will be privately owned, and the water and wastewater within the subdivision will be installed and maintained by the Property Owners Association. The property will have have an association to maintain the private drive and the private amenities within the project. That concludes staff's presentation. Open any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Morris. Are there any questions by the commission of staff? Any at all? Okay, is the applicant present? Please come forward, state your name for the record.
Morning, Commission. Lee Johnson, APL Surveying. And this project here is a mix of 2-bedroom and 1-bedroom units with attached garages. There will be 7 2-bedroom units, 4 1-bedroom units, the existing house and the pool parcel like Luke had mentioned, and I'm here to answer any questions if you have them.
Any questions of the applicant by commissioners? Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Appreciate
You're welcome. You guys have a good day.
Okay, this is a public hearing. I will now open the microphone to the public. Is there anybody in the audience that wishes to speak on this item, either pro or con? Anybody at all? Seeing none, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing portion of this item and bring it back to the table for staff's recommendations.
Honorable Chairman, Commissioners, thank you. Based on the findings, the Development Review Committee recommends approval of Land Use Action 22-3175, a preliminary subdivision plat for Ivy Court Estates for 1740 Bahama Avenue, Tract 115, Block 4, Lot 4, creating a 13-unit residential condominium subdivision in the multiple family RM district. Thank you.
Okay, commissioners, we are here at the table for discussion and or a motion. Anybody?
There's
Mr. Nelson.
only one thing I'd like to discuss, and it's all positive. Looks like they got a lot of parking in here, which is something we've been talking about. But in R2, R3, R4, R5 zoning, we have had a lot of homes built that are single-family residents on this type of lot, and I really like seeing that they're developing the lot to its potential, and I hope that we see more R2, R3, R4, R5 owners coming forward and putting additional structures on those lots. So I think this is just for discussion. I think it's a great item.
Thank you, Mr. Nelson. Anybody else? Mr. Diaz, did you have something?
Yeah, I like to concur with Chad because it gives us inventory, which might take some pressure off some of the housing pricing that we see. It's inventory and demand right now is an issue. So this is really, I agree.
Anybody else? We are at the table for discussion and or a motion. Anybody?
I'll make a motion to approve item 22-3175 with staff's recommendations.
I'll second that.
We have a motion by Mr. Nelson and a second by Mr. Diaz to approve item number 22-3175 with staff's recommendations. Any further discussion on the item? Hearing none, let's call for the question. Place your votes.
Mr. Lair,
Yes.
Did you sign in, Jim?
keep in mind the screen will show one less voting member, but that'll be tallied in the end. Motion passes 7-0.
Okay, congratulations and good luck.
And
The-
Mr. Chairman, I need to recuse myself for the second item.
Mr. Nelson, you may step down.
All right, and for the record, it's for consulting on the subdivision lot split.
Okay. Mr. Mitchell, please come forward. Retake the seat that you already had. All right, the next item on today's agenda is ID 22-3176. This is a request for a preliminary subdivision plat for Rizos Black Hill subdivision for 4124 Black Hill Place, tract 2283A, block 2, lot 8B and 8C, creating 3 residential lots and 1 parcel in the single-family residential R1 district. Mr. Morris, your presentation.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, thank you. This property is located at the end of the Black Hill Place cul-de-sac in the kind of the northwest corner of the originally platted area. It includes 2 lots that are part of an existing subdivision lot that was split into 3 separate parcels in 1987. There were 3 parcels. 1 parcel was split into 3 pieces back in 1987, and this is the 2 lots, these 2 lots are part of this request. It is up a very steep hill. It's over 150 feet from the street up to the level where the pads of the lots are. All the surrounding properties are zoned R1, single-family residential. Here's a subdivision track map for the property. Again, it contains 2 of the 3 lots that were originally created in 1987 as part of tract 2282A, block 2, lot 8. Because that original lot was split into 3 separate lots, and they're proposing to split that property even more, it has to go through the subdivision process. So this is the proposed map of the subdivision. I'm going to go to the next slide. Hopefully this will help. It's showing it a little more color-coded, so hopefully we can follow along a little better. The proposed subdivision plat will allow, of course, these lots to be individually sold and created them and to be individually sold. There are a total of 3 lots and a common parcel. So the common parcel will include the driveway coming all the way up, and it's also be a utility and drainage easement across all this light blue parcel. That's common parcel A. It's a long, snaky parcel. And then we have the 3 new lots up here on the upper right, and in the middle and the lower left. Those are the 3 individual lots that will be created out of the 2 original lots. The city water is available to the property line at Black Hill Place right away. They will require individual water lines to each of these properties, given the slope that comes up there. So they'll have to take on the water utility as their own. They'll have to work that out through their subdivision process. Wastewater is not available in this area, so of course they'll have to have some sort of alternative wastewater system, septic tank, something to deal with this wastewater. And parcel A is the ingress-egress easement in PUE. It will be privately maintained by the Property Owners Association, and that will include all sewer and water lines that all water lines that they'll need, as well as any electrical and cable and things like that. So that parcel A is going to serve a lot of purposes. And again, we're creating these 3 lots in parcel A out of this original 2 lots through this subdivision process. That concludes staff's presentation. Open any questions. Thank you.
Okay, any question of staff by commissioners? I'm going to start with the first one, just for clarification. Did you say this is going to be on sewer?
No, it's not on sewer. I misspoke a couple times and I tried to walk that back. It's not on sewer. So the wastewater will have to be provided on site through a septic tank system or some sort of system to
Okay.
deal with the wastewater.
Thank you. Any other questions of staff by commissioners? Anybody at all? Okay, is the applicant present? Would you like to make a presentation? Please come forward, state your name for the record.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Anthony Rizos. So it's an honor to be here today, and thank you for the opportunity. I want to start by thanking Mr. Morris for the presentation. Did a very good job summarizing the application. I'd also like to thank Director Thunman and city staff for all their help navigating this process. This property has been in my family for almost 40 years. My father, Dr. Nick Rizos, fell in love with Havasu after he graduated from medical school, and he decided to move here to start his career in 1983. He spent the next 37 years serving the community as an OBGYN doctor, and he delivered thousands of Havasu's babies, including me. Very sadly and suddenly, he lost his life in July 2020 at the age of 65, so I am now representing his estate. He knew soon after moving to Havasu that he wanted to make Black Hill his home. Throughout the 1980s, he worked with architects and engineers to bring his vision to life, including creating multiple home sites where we or others could build. A parcel plat and CC&Rs were recorded at that time, and a private driveway and utilities were constructed to serve each site. He had long intended to make improvements to modernize the property, including revising the original 1987 parcel plat. He started moving forward with his plans in 2019, but unfortunately he didn't have the chance to finish. So now I'm carrying forward his vision. Thank you again for your time, and I'm open for any questions.
Any questions of the applicant by staff? Okay, thank you, Mr. Rizos.
Thank you.
All right, this is a public hearing, so if there's anybody in the audience that wishes to speak on this item, anybody at all, please come forward, state your name for the record. Seeing none, I will go ahead and close the public hearing portion and bring it back to the table for staff's recommendations.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, thank you. Based on the findings, the Development Review Committee recommends approval of Land Use Action 22-3176, a preliminary subdivision plat for Rizzo's Black Hill subdivision for 4124 Black Hill Place, Tract 2282A, Block 2, Lot 8B and 8C, creating 3 residential lots in 1 parcel in the single-family R1 residential district. Thank you.
Okay, we are at the table for discussion and/or emotion. Commissioners? Anybody? Mr. Diaz?
I recommend a motion to approve item number 22-3176 with staff's recommendations.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Diaz and a second by Ms. Medley to approve item number 22-3176 with staff's recommendations. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, let's go ahead and place our votes.
Mr. Lair?
Yes.
Thank you. Mitchell?
Yay.
Motion passes 7-0.
Congratulations. Good luck. Next item on today's agenda is ID 22-3177. This is a review and a discussion and discuss the development standards for the residential Uptown Main Street, which is the R-UMS district, and residential commercial health, which is the R-CHD multifamily districts. Mr. Morris, your presentation.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, thank you. A little background information about this request. This is, of course, a discussion item. Staff is looking for input from the commission on what, if anything, to revise or update for these two zoning districts. One of the intents of the original district was to provide medium and high-density residential development along those portions of Mesquite and Swanson Avenues that are parallel to McCulloch Boulevard in what we call the Main Street area generally. The districts that currently allow up to 42 feet with no residential maximum for density. So it does allow multiple stories in that area, again, with no maximum residential density. Another one of the original objectives of these districts was to create a more walkable Main Street by encouraging developments that have pedestrian connection to the Main Street area by allowing buildings designed with front porches, stoops, front doors facing the street. There have been some recent developments and proposals within the zoning districts that are not really realizing the vision of how these areas were intended to develop. They are not really taking advantage of the increased building height and density that's allowed in those zoning districts. So staff is asking for input, discussion, and direction from the Planning Commission as to if and or how to amend the district's current development standards to help them meet the intent of the zoning districts. And then some potential discussion items may include assigning minimum density dwelling units per acre to the properties, maybe requiring a certain number of levels of the building to be built, potentially looking at the form of those buildings, and how they're designed, and then possibly permitted uses on the properties. So with that, I guess the first thing is, where are these zoning districts? Where are they located relative to the rest of the city? So here's an overview. McCulloch Boulevard runs through the middle of near the middle of the map. You'll see the RUMS is near the upper part and what's really more of the heart of the Main Street area. So it's flanked, that mixed use UMS district is flanked by these RUMS zoning districts on either side of it. Mesquite Avenue to the north, and then along Swanson Avenue, and then toward the south of that. And then the RCHD has a node of it up here, kind of to the east of the hospital area, and then south of Swanson Avenue down from Smoke Tree Avenue down toward Lake Havasu Avenue. It's a long stretch of commercial health district, which is a residential zoning district. Just the general idea, here's the excerpts from the development code. They state the purpose of those districts, basically looking for higher density, taller buildings are allowed, and then some examples of how it's envisioned to be developed. You'll see there's connections to the street, like a personal, like a pedestrian connection, a human scale connection to the street, with these buildings being up closer to the right of way, and then having access for people to go in and out of the properties, and with good access, walkable access to the main street. As far as the the dimensional standards for the property, this areas that are highlighted in yellow are the properties, and you'll see there's no minimum area for the lots. There's no minimum width or depth, and one of the critical things here, there's no minimum or maximum densities, dwelling units per acres for the properties. There's also not a minimum area for a dwelling unit. So square footage of each living area is not specified here either. So that's something that's all those NAs say there's a lot of flexibility for a developer. And then if we get down near the bottom, I'm highlighting the height that's allowed. 42 feet is allowed unless it's adjacent to single family residential. In some cases, there's residential single family next to it, and then it's limited to only 18 feet in height.
Point of clarification, please. When you say single-family residential, you mean the lot adjacent has to be zoned single-family residential, not a single-family residential unit on one of these properties.
You've phrased that correctly. Yes, that's correct. It's based on residential single-family zoning.
Just wanted to make that clear.
To 18 feet. In some other zoning district, there's also a caveat if it's adjacent to single-family or two-family use that's been existing. That's more with the Southgate area, but this area, you're right on. It's limited to 18 feet if it's next to single-family residential.
Thank you.
So what does density look like? I mean, this is one of the things we're looking at, trying to encourage more density. So here are 10 different projects throughout that downtown area with a table. So I'm going to flip over to another slideshow, and we'll look at each of these more individually and get an idea what that density looks like. So here's an example. We're going to start on Mesquite Avenue, so north of McCulloch, and we're going along Mesquite Avenue. So here's 1957 Mesquite Avenue. This project overall has 56 units. The total acreage of the lot is just over 2 acres, which computes to 26 units per acre. And I try to get living area where it's possible. These living areas are pretty much an estimate. It's about 800 square feet of living area per unit on average for this project. And you'll see that here's the overall. It's 2 stories tall. Here's the street view from the street. Two stories with parking in the front and scattered around the project. Here's up the street a little more, 1989 Mesquite Avenue. There are 96 units in this project, over 3.2 acres, which computes about 30 units per acre. And these are about 770 square feet on average of living area. Again, these are multiple stories. They're 2 stories, and it has parking provided throughout the site. And again, it's about 30 units per acre, so that's what a density of 30 per acre could look like. And then up a little more on Mesquite, 2085 Mesquite Avenue. This project has 80 units, just over around 2.3 acres, which computes to about 35 units per acre. And these have about 900 square feet of living area. You'll notice that the parking's not really visible that much from the street in this one, and it has some sidewalks that go out to access from the front of these properties, 2 sidewalks that connect to the street. And then 2094 Mesquite Avenue. This is 52 units on this project, just over 1 acre. Comes to about 48 units per acre. This living area again is about 770 square feet. It has kind of a main entrance kind of feel along Mesquite, not to each individual unit, but there's an entry into the project, the complex itself. It does have parking around the back along the alley, and there's some underground parking in the 3rd level. So from the street, it's 2 levels of living. Along the alley, there's a parking underneath, and then 2 levels of living above a parking. So it looks like 3 stories from the rear, parking below, and 2 stories above. Now we're going to go down to Swanson Avenue. So we're starting down closer to Lake Havasu Avenue on the south side of Swanson. This project has 58 units on almost 1.7 acres. It's about 34 units per acre, and its average is about 870 square feet of living area per unit. This is another multi-level project. Parking at the very bottom, and then 2 levels of residences above. Of course, it also has some amenities in the center, but it has some surface parking, and then garages, and then residential units above. And this, again, for density purposes, this is about 34 units per acre. Now we go up to 1850 Swanson Avenue. There are 50 units in this project. It's just over 1 acre in size, which computes about 42 units per acre. This is another one that has parking below and then 2 levels above. There's also some surface parking. The parking's accessed from going around the back. There's not direct access to the parking from the front. So this is another example, and this one's 42 units per acre. And there's this little smaller one. There's 12 units in this project. That's just under half an acre. And this computes to about 27 units per acre. It has about 1,300 square feet of living. It does have garages on the bottom floor. So in this picture, there's garages on the bottom floor, but they're behind the living area. So here's living area. Behind this, there's a garage, and then there's an upper story above the garage and above the 1st story here. This is about, again, an example, about 27 units per acre. And here's the project under construction just up from that at 2042 Swanson Avenue. These are, the subdivision is for 13 units that are freestanding, standalone. They have garage in the bottom and then 2 levels of living area, totaling about 770 square feet of living area for each of these units. This is about 23 units per acre on this project. And it has garages underneath each of the units and then some guest parking on it. Here's another project that's been constructed. We don't have an aerial for it. It's that new also, but it shows 10 units total on 0.41 acres, which is about 24 units per acre. These units are about 530 square feet overall. It has surface parking in the middle with a covered parking there and some guest parking spaces on the property. This is a mix of 1 and 2 bedroom units. And then the final one is 2100 Swanson Avenue. This one was built quite a while ago. It has surface parking wrapped around the property. It has 23 units on 1 acre, which computes to 23 units per acre. I could do that math in my head, believe it or not. And these are about 520 square feet each on average. So this is a kind of a rundown of what sort of density we're looking for or is existing in the downtown area in these zoning districts. So to give you an idea of what 20 units per acre looks like, there's an example. Here's 24 units, 23, 42 units per acre. There's, again, different, hopefully this will help you wrap your head around what sort of developments are existing there. And if we're looking for minimum densities, what some of those densities may translate to in the real world. So I'll go back to my original slideshow here. So again, this is a recap of those. So we have this to refer to. You'll see that the units per acre range from around 23 up to 48 units per acre. And a total number of units in those projects, those complexes, is 450 total units on about 14 acres. And the average is about 32 units per acre density. And the average living area is about 800 square feet, plus or minus. And then, as I'd mentioned in the introduction, previously we had what were called transects. Before this updated development code, there was a previous development code. It had some information in here about the form or the appearance of these buildings. The main thing that I want to focus on here is that in that original zone, those original zoning districts, the buildings here shall include non-habitable building features which provide shade, such as stoops, porches, canopies, and similar type features, and they can encroach within the front setback. The idea there was to, again, provide a connection, a physical human connection, pedestrian connection from the property to the street, and to help encourage people to get out and walk around that area as opposed to getting their car and driving. That area of downtown is good to have high density in a walkable community. That's a good, it brings vibrancy to an area. And what we're seeing on current projects and some in the pipeline are maybe not as dense as we would hope to have, but that's why we're coming to the Planning Commission and saying, what's your thought on this as a commission? Are you looking for higher density? Can we talk about how these buildings look, how they relate to the street, to that area with an appearance, and what any sort of minimum square footage. I don't know if you want to look at minimum square footage for units, things like that. So with that, I really conclude staff's presentation. We really want to get involved with the more enjoyable part, talking about what the commission feels. What do you think of these zoning districts, and what do you envision for that area? How can we help make that happen for these zoning districts through their development standards? So open to any discussion you may have. Thank you.
I'll open the discussion.
Mr. Nelson.
I think, some of these projects that are coming forward are really, really great. The 2042 Swanson project, if you want to scroll over to that one.
Well, Swanson.
There you go. That's a really great project. You know, every unit has a garage too. I think it's going to be a little tight getting in and out of those garages, but one thing there's several components to this type of unit that are important, and that's what I want to bring to the table. Number one, you can see how they're all detached. And when you have a condo complex, you have to finance a condo in a condo complex where all of the units are attached together. It's difficult to get financing. So someone that could afford a unit like this typically can't get what's called FHA financing, where they get a little bit better interest rate and they're allowed, gift funds from relatives and things like that. A little bit of a push to be able to get into the unit. Whereas these are detached. And as far as my research, I've talked to several lenders about this, and these could qualify for an FHA loan. So someone that needs, housing under $400,000 in Lake Havasu City, when the average sales price is well over $500 now, someone with going for an FHA loan could get into this unit. The other thing I wanted to bring up, and that's because they're detached. Where a condo complex, what lenders look at in a condo complex is that they have 51% occupancy of owner occupancy, and most of our condo complexes do not have that. They're mostly owned by people out of state, and it's their vacation property. And what lenders don't like is when it's under 51% owner occupied. If the market changes, then people just dump them, and the lenders don't want to be held with that bag. So that's why 51% and more owner occupancy is important when it comes to getting a FHA loan or a loan with less than 20% down on a condo, which that's about the only affordable housing right now. This complex here, because they're detached units, you can qualify for that type of financing. The second thing I wanted to bring up is, there's three parts that I wanted to bring up, but the second thing is about the minimum square footage. And, what we're seeing is an average of, 700 and something? 800 square feet, somewhere in there. I think that in the future, we're going to be seeing smaller units, maybe even 300 square foot units could be possible for studios and things like that. Other cities are developing units for single people, single users that don't necessarily have a bedroom. That they might have a separation wall where the kitchen and living and everything is all one studio type situation. We haven't seen that in Havasu, but I think that if we go off the average, it'll hurt Havasu. We probably need to be thinking of a lower square footage because we just haven't seen that style of unit be built here yet. And the third thing that I wanted to bring up was when developers are looking at projects like this, and let's say they want to gear it towards affordable housing, there are some financing aspects, grants, things like that, that will encourage lower square footage. As specifically, about 600 square feet is the marker. So if we go over 600 square feet as the minimum square footage, then we could be barring some developers of creating that type of unit. So we need to be careful about the minimum square footage. And I think that's about all my talking points.
Anybody else? Ms. Medley?
Yes, I'd like to just interject to, like, on the square footage and the style of units. I think the struggle that we have in Havasu is that we need to put some kind of, I guess, caveat to it where that's not going to be a VRBO, or there has to be some owner occupation in these units, because they tend to, we say we want affordable housing for the people that live here. But think about who those people are. They work in restaurants. Are they going to be able to afford a $300,000 to $400,000 condo? And I think we just need to make it so that it's a realistic thing for them. You know, square footage aside, you still have to live in these units. Think about living in a 300 square foot apartment. I can't even imagine it, just for myself. So I think we just have to kind of envision what we really want to do in Havasu, because we are a resort town and we have so many people that come in and just buy units and then rent them out. And how can we, I guess, prevent that from encroaching on the people that really need that affordable housing here for us to be a better place to live?
I think that might be a question for Kelly. I know I had this discussion just last week, back in the foreclosure days, when it would be like a VA foreclosure or FHA foreclosure, the banks could put in a rule when it hit the market that it could be owner occupied or a primary residence first for 15 days. So someone that was going to buy it just to rent it out, or buy it to make it a vacation rental, or buy it for a vacation home, there was a 15-day period where they could not make an offer. I don't know the legalities of that.
I think we're way off track. I mean, I'd love to discuss that, but I don't know that right now is the time or place to do that. I don't think it goes with the agenda item. So we're really here to talk about increasing density in the downtown and what that looks like and what we can do with the development code for that. Although there's a place in that for affordable housing and maybe some of these other questions. I think right now the focus is more on looking to what ways we can maybe revise the development code, if you're interested, to entice or to require higher densities within that corridor. Am I right, Luke, or am I off?
That's part
I believe you're correct. Some of the points that were brought up were kind of extraneous to our discussion. But the one point that Mr. Nelson hit on was the square footage. And we don't have, or do we have, limitations on square footage for a unit on higher density properties?
We have, I'll go back to the residential standards. We do have square footage minimums for multiple family. Starting at R2, there's 900 square feet. R3 is 500 square feet. And then RM, which used to be called R4, is 400 square feet. So those are minimums.
So we're already there.
We don't
with
have
the
any
square
minimums
footage.
for these two districts, which gives them actually quite a bit of flexibility. They could be large square footage, they could be small. There's a large option there. So if you're looking to provide the most opportunity for options for square footage, leaving that unchanged would certainly allow huge flexibility.
So currently, it's pretty enticing as far as square footage for development.
Right. And
Mr. Mitchell, did you
optional.
have something?
Yeah, if our goal here is high density, can we put in a maximum square footage allowed?
That kind of falls in the same line as requiring a minimum square footage. Yes, you can put maximum in there. I've never seen a maximum in our code.
That's kind
or
of
used.
restricting someone's private use of their property.
Mm-hmm.
Don't want to go there.
So I have a question.
Mr. Diaz.
So can you go back to, Luke, can you go to the slide where you had the front of where it showed, right there. So correct me if I'm wrong, but did you mention that kind of the reason we're having this discussion also is because you felt some of the older projects and then maybe the newer projects coming up in these areas on Mesquite and Swanson are not doing kind of like the feel we want to look for with the stoops and the frontage here and so forth. Does that come up during the conversations when these developers come up and wanted to build on these two streets? Do they know about these before we?
Well, when someone comes in and say, hey, what can I do in the RUMS or the RCHD district? I'll sit down with them, go over the development code. I make a point to show them, here's some pictures of what we're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
Our development code doesn't say it has to have that stoop or that porch or that connection, human connection to the street.
Mm-hmm.
It's not in there. It was in the previous code for these zoning districts, but that didn't get carried over into this new code. So there's nothing that staff can point to that says you have to do something that looks similar to this. You can have the side of the house facing the street. You could have the side of a garage facing the street, but there's nothing there saying we want the front door or the front of that property with a pedestrian scale facing the street.
Facing the street.
We've enticed that a little bit by allowing encroachment with porticos, porches, those kind of things into that 10-foot setback. And that in itself encourages that kind of development.
That could certainly help. Our current code does allow a 5-foot encroachment for shade providing structures. All residential properties enjoy that benefit. So that, in theory, could allow some encroachment closer than 10 feet, actually.
One of the reasons that the older projects may be self-contained within their own perimeter was because our old code did not encourage that kind of encroachment.
Yeah, typically would have at least a 15-foot front setback for something like an RM, which was R4. Lower than that, then it's a 20-foot setback from the front for R3 and R2.
So all we were here today for was to kind of review this and just kind of discuss it a little bit.
Yeah, discuss it, and then does the commission feel that this is something that we need to look at the development code here? Do we want to say, hey, is there a minimum density we're looking for units per acre? Because right now, someone could come in, buy one of those lots and build a single-family home on it. It just is allowed. It's not the best use of the property, obviously, in that downtown area. For that downtown to work and flourish, we want people in that area. And people living there are really good for downtowns, living in that area. And if we can encourage more density in that area, it would be a benefit. It also makes good use of the existing infrastructure, sewer and water in that area. It's already there. You don't have to pay to install more sewer and more water lines because it's already there. And at this point, it looks like it could handle additional density in that area.
Well, I agree with your thoughts there, and that thinking about all of the infrastructure and encouraging that. I think we probably want to tread lightly on potentially restricting what somebody can do with their property. If they want to build a single-family residence, it's probably not the highest and best use for that property. Eventually, someday, that'll get torn down and we will have something else there, but I'm not sure we want to start restricting in that regard.
Jim, if
Mr. Nelson.
And to the commission, I think, if we were to do something to change this and help to maximize the usage, if that's what our intent was, some of the projects that we're seeing, I think the one on Upper Swanson or Mesquite, I can't remember which one it was, but you've got kind of a prime lot and it's all single story. And I would say that if we could do something beneficial to the community as far as density, it would be to limit some of these projects to 2-story or more.
But there again, you are restricting what somebody can do with their property, and financing and their financial ability may come into play. They may not have the ability to do 2-story. So if it was your property and you were in that situation, you might not want the city imposing those kind of restrictions.
True, but we got
to be careful.
Yeah, I mean, it's a discussion. it's a discussion, you know. But if
We would certainly encourage it.
yeah, and I think the zoning that has been created, the RUMS and the RCHD, is encouraging that. The other thing that I was going to say is that we have a maximum lot coverage of 60%. So if you were to go the other direction and say, if you want to open that up more, because some of the older units have underground parking, that's another area where I think could actually open it up more, where
By increasing the
by
coverage.
increasing the lot coverage to maybe, 80% with the caveat of underground parking.
Well, the 3-story property there on Swanson is doing that with their parking underneath each unit. So their coverage seems to be a little more than the norm.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's a good.
So I think
thing
that
to
would
do
be
to
a good
encourage.
step in the right direction.
And Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, I want to actually point out, make sure it's clear, there is a section here for minimum percentage of front setback that should be occupied by a building that's shown as 60% on this table. As far as the lot coverage overall, in most zoning districts, it's 60% or 50%. In these zoning districts, there's no minimum required, no maximum lot coverage
Oh,
required.
yeah.
So,
Okay. Sorry, I was looking at the wrong line.
yeah, the 60% is close by, but it's a little misleading, it could be. So there's no lot coverage requirement, minimum or maximum for it.
Do we have some special expertise that wants to weigh in, Mr.?
Good
Tuneman?
morning. Jeff Tuneman, the Development Service Director, for those of you that don't know me. I just wanted to clarify that if we do stipulations like 2-story, 3-story, and we do decide to amend the development code, those individuals, if they can't afford that or don't want to build a single or they want to build a single family and we say you can't, they have the option to come back with a planned development, come back to the commission and propose what they're wanting to amend to this code. So just keep that in mind. If we do want to go 2-story, someone doesn't want to develop a 2-story, they can come back with a PD, planned development, and you all get to look at that and decide if that would be acceptable or not.
You mean if they came back with a single family residence and we'd already restricted it to 2-story?
Correct. So to your point, trying to restrict people on their own properties, well, we can tweak this how we feel fit, but if they want to develop their property other than what the development code says at that time, then they're gonna come back with a PD to you folks and then to council to alter the development code. So there is that process in place that can be followed as well.
Problem is, some of these people have bought these properties way back when. They're old like me, but
Sure.
way back when, and they were kind of given a scenario as to what they could do at that time.
Sure, I understand that, but remember a couple months ago, we talked about C1 and C2 zoning districts limiting storage units. So the same, I understand your concept, but that same concept would apply to these. And so we decided to take storage units out of, was it C2? C2. We decided to take that out with the understanding that the individual could come back with a planned development if they wanted to forego the storage unit thing. So I understand your concerns, but we have done that in the past, just recently, within the last 4 or 5 months, and it was successful doing that. So, and if there is current projects in the works right now for those areas, and we do decide to take some tweaks to this, and they don't comply with those, they can come in with a design review at this time, which will secure it for how long, Luke? A year. A design review approval is good for a year. And they can go that process, or they could come do a PD at that time to secure that. So I just wanted to note, just kind of lay it all out there for you guys, that if you do, don't be afraid to tweak this, because they can come back and ask for forgiveness, call it.
Can I say something? I am a little.
Mr. Diaz.
I am a little not afraid to tweak it, but we start tweaking and then we say you could come back, and if people get a feeling that it's, special favors are being made by some people. If they did it, how come I can't do it? If we turn one guy down, if we approve somebody else. So I see what you're saying, but you kind of like open up a can of worms. So Luke, when you show the developers what we're trying to go after.
Thank you, Mr. Tuneman.
Thank you. when we show the developers what we're trying to go after, and they don't, I mean, I know it's not mandated that they do it this way, but you think it's it's more cost restricted? And you guys, some of you guys here are developers. Is this more money to do that enticing, walking areas and porches, and does this cost more money to do that? Maybe that's why they're not doing it that way.
I think sometimes the developers have a product already in existence that they use for some of these smaller multifamily projects, and they have that already laid out, and they cookie cutter that and try to put it in, shoehorn it into other properties. I see that happening. I think good design goes a long way in making a good product, and just a standard box, sure, that works. That can be done efficiently and probably pretty inexpensively, but good design will trump that because it'll look better, and I think it will stand the test of time and work better longer. We do have an architect on the commission. I'm not sure if Paul has any thoughts on that as far as design.
Yeah,
Mr. Lair.
Thanks. Yeah, I have to admit, after being away for a while and coming back and driving down Swanson, it was really a surprise to see the single-story, residence in close proximity to the newer, 3-4-story development, and it does seem like a real awkward. It doesn't feel like it fits at all. And though I get where Jim, you guys are saying, respect the rights of the landowner, but yet it doesn't seem to be accomplishing, especially at least visually, what the intent of the zoning code is. And it is interesting to see that the units per acre are almost identical, whether you have that single story as an example or the newer one that's under construction, almost identical units per acre, which was really surprising to see that. So I guess, yeah, if I was going to change something, I would encourage the height, try and get back to that. But I guess a question I do have is, what's the inventory like as far as lots? Is it too late to try and shift gears?
That's a very good question, and I do have some information on that. In these two zoning districts, there's about 17 acres of vacant land in these zoning districts. There's about 5 acres in the commercial health, the CHD. There's about 12 acres in the RUMS zoning. So we are getting lower on that. If we go back to the table we have here, overall, these 10 developments have 14 acres. And we're looking, the 12 to 10 examples that I've provided. So we have about 17 acres of vacant land in those districts now. So that's not a whole lot based on what was there originally. So we're getting close to running out of high density inventory lots in this area.
I wanted to go back to that. Can you bring back the visual on Swanson, the single story? Right there. So that, it does bring inventory, but I was kind of heartbroken when that went in because it is it doesn't maximize what, the 17 acres that we have left.
I would submit that is purely a function of financial cost.
Sure, and I understand that. And I agree with Mr. Tuneman that, if it's been in the family forever and that was their legacy project and they want to bring it before the commission and we can vote on it. I know it's an unpopular thing. We have to make tough decisions.
Well, we're a little late to the table for that. We're halfway through.
Yeah.
And it's not too late to direct and see about enticing people to do what we're looking for.
Well, the enticement's there. It's basically NA across the board. But we are seeing, we've seen a couple projects come through on Swanson recently, and one was a 2-story, one was a single story.
And Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, thank you. If I may interject, there are some other projects that are out there in the pipeline that are in the planning stages that are 2-story that do have a pedestrian kind of connection. So there are some people that are looking at that and trying to get ahead of and take advantage of what could be allowed there. I'm not sure exactly what their overall density is, but they're example of more what we're looking for as far as the form of the building and its connection to the street too. So there are some examples here of what's built don't really match that, what we're looking for the development code.
Exactly.
But there may be some others in the pipeline. I don't want to give the impression that everyone is doing it this way, but this is what we've seen. We've not seen anything that what we're really looking for the development standards. So if and when more come online that do take advantage of it, I think people will look at it, the new developers of these vacant lots will look at it and say, well, they did that, that looks good. Hopefully that's a good project, and that maybe will help snowball things. But I think a starting point is important. And I think, if I may interject about the living area, I'm agreeing with what I'm hearing. It sounds like no minimum, no maximum, because that gives most flexibility to the projects that I would suggest.
I think encouragement by staff, which I'm sure you guys are doing, when they come to the counter to discuss, the possibilities, goes a long way. So need to keep doing that. Anybody else? Anything further on this?
I know we're not making a motion on this, but, and it may be an unpopular opinion, but I think that the commission needs to move in a direction on these 2 zoning districts to be 2-story plus. I think all of the other characteristics of what we're allowing are very enticing for these 2 districts.
I'm not sure what you mean by the commission needs to move on this. We're not policymakers like the council is. We can make recommendations if that's the case, but.
My recommendation is 2-story plus.
Thank you.
I'll leave it at that.
Appreciate that. Anybody else? Mr. Lair.
I guess a final thought would be, should there be a stronger design review process? Not that I remember some older times when there was a lot of design input from staff, which I really didn't particularly enjoy as an architect, but I'm just wondering if there's some sort of a middle ground that could improve things that might avoid some of those, weaker design projects.
Well, thank you for the question. As far as staff input, we have input. We could suggest things, but again, it comes down to what the development code is showing too. I mean, we can't force somebody to do something that's not in the code. We can show them the pretty picture and say, hey, this is what we're hoping to see in this area, but we certainly can't force them to do that. If there's some language in there that suggested otherwise in the development code, that would be good. So if the commission wants to see something with a form in a form of the building, then you can certainly give direction to incorporate that into some changes for these districts. And then staff would certainly have more teeth to enforce or make sure projects are meeting the development standards.
Mr. Tuneman, did you want to weigh in?
I just wanted to remind you why we're here today is because we're just looking for direction from you, and we'll take what you offer and take it back and look how we can implement that in the development code and then bring that back to you. I mean, we're really looking for, do we want to do 2-story? Do we want to do 3-story? Are you interested in that? Do we want to look at some building form? Like, do we want to have some standards like our old code had for the building facing the street? Do we want to require stoops and porches and entries and those type things, a percentage? Or we're just looking for direction to where we can present to you, okay, maybe 10% entries and that kind of thing. So we're just looking if you would be interested in that, maybe not the specifics right now, but we would bring those specifics to you. So if you're interested in the 2-story, yeah, we can bring that back. Are we interested in a minimum density? That's our biggest thing. You know, they could do 1, they could do 100, right? Because it's NA. Do we want to look at 2 per acre minimums, 3 per acre minimums? So that's kind of what we're after today is, do you want to set a minimum? Do you want to set a building standard? And do you want to set a building height? Would you be interested in that?
Allowable building height or required building height?
Excuse me, stories. We agree 42, with a building height of 42, we could have multiple stories. So do we want to say you have to have a minimum 2-story building? Because right now it's NA, so you can come in with a 1-story, 2-story, 3-story, maybe even a 4-story. But that's what we're looking for. Are we okay with them being able to go 1-story to whatever they want? Or do we want it to start at 2-story and go from there? And if they want to go 1-story, then they come back through the process, through the PD process. So that's kind of what that's the main reason we're here today is, do we need do we want to set a minimum density? Do we want to set a different story height other than 1-story? Do you want to go 2-story, 3-story? What are you thinking? And then how about some architectural standards for the building that faces the right of way?
Food for thought.
On 2042 Swanson, years ago, I used to own that lot, and if you look at it right now, one of the reasons why I sold it was because I wanted to follow the code, but you can see that there's several signs, city signs, and there's also utilities that you can't see in this picture. So when you faced the street, access and parking was very difficult. I mean, you'd basically end up with almost like if you were to do it per the picture and face them towards the street, you would end up with, a lot less units. You wouldn't be maximizing the property. So, I don't know. I mean, I think that they did a good job the way that, filling up the property, the way that they did it was as far as, having garages and, storage and stuff like that and maximizing the property. So there's going to be, when you look at some of the other complexes like Pull Up One, many of the other ones that have a corner, like that has a corner. And parking becomes a lot easier with corners. You can pull up another one that has a corner. A lot of these are corners, so they can actually park their cars all the way around and have a lot more access. And I think that's part of the difficulty with some of the units, unless you go underground parking. So I think it's really case by case, but there are some struggles out there when you go to develop some of these lots with street signs, utilities, stuff that wasn't really thought out when the lots were spacing those utilities and things like that, fire hydrants and all the stuff that you have to move, but. I think the best impact that we have, it could be to limit to 2 stories. And I did reach out to the city, to staff at one point in time, talking about architectural review, which I think would be kind of a separate thing. They got back to me right away, and perhaps we need to look at the general plan, like in a separate meeting, and look at the architectural review process. They were open to us talking about that, but I think it's 2 separate things.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I think this is
Mr. Diaz.
And I appreciate your comments. This is a good, kind of like an eye-opening, what we're doing here, and it's a good first step to look at this. Maybe we just need to study it more and then come back for another discussion. But I think this is beneficial to me. because I do see some of the problems everyone's talking about, and as I drive up and down those streets also, and God, that could have been more utilized better, more space on that, more building on that lot and so forth. So this is a good first step. I think to bring this back would be good to discuss, and then we could maybe integrate some of these things we've been talking about if they make sense. But that's my opinion.
Anybody else? Thank you, Mr. Morris. Appreciate it.
Can I?
Ms.
just-
Medley.
Sorry, on the tail end of that, but I think it would be good to see some options for the standards and different things like that. And I guess the question I have is, can you grandfather the folks that, I mean, if you have a lot for 40 years anyway, you have to assume that things are going to change, but is it possible to grandfather people that already have their lot?
Well,
And how would that impact the whole design process?
well, as far as grandfathering, something that's existing now that was developed under the existing codes is legal nonconforming or grandfathered in. Any new changes that are made to the code come effective upon adoption, usually 30 days after the council approves it. And then that goes with the new property, goes with the property regardless. So moving forward, it has to meet the current development standards. Not really a mechanism that I know of to say, hey, these lots can abide by the previous zoning category. That's not really the
Not
way
realistic.
zoning works. It would be something that, as Mr. Tooneman had mentioned, if they wanted to come back and abide by a previous zoning code, they may be able to do something through that plan development process, but asking for exceptions to the current existing code, or the one that would be adopted. So if the zoning gets changed or the standards get changed, that change becomes effective, and then anything new needs to meet those codes. And the only way really around that would be come back for a plan development
PD.
specific rezone for a specific standard to get that exception allowed that's not allowed under the new code, if you will.
That becomes a little bit problematic in the fact that it's quite subjective. Your comment, they may be able to come back and maybe bring a former plan that they had for years and years that they were planning on doing. I'm still concerned about, I'm all for progress, and I'd love to see all of this implemented, but we have to be careful.
And if the commission is looking to give direction to staff, that's what we're looking for here at this meeting. Do we come back with some proposed language that says XYZ, building height, not building height, but number of stories, minimum number of stories, minimum density, some design standards? Is the commission interested in, we would be happy to do that, but we're looking for that direction. How should we move forward from this? Do we keep it just the way it is? My personal opinion from a professional planner is we're looking for more density in that area per the general plan, per the zoning district, per the downtown. That's what a downtown needs, is thriving residential nearby. And I think if we keep going the way it's going now, it'd be easy for people to turn property over, build little units, not necessarily little, but short units, not a whole lot of density, and then be gone, and then that property is pretty much gone. It's very unusual, unless the property is really expensive, to tear down old stuff and build brand new multiple stories. So I think now is a good time. There's 17 acres or so left. Hopefully we can make good development with those remaining acres with higher density that will help serve the downtown area and Havasu overall. So again, staff's looking for any sort of direction. We'll be happy to draft some ideas and come back to you with those, but direction's what we're looking for now, and hopefully something that's not the status quo, but we're looking again for that direction at your service on that.
Anybody else? Will come back to us with some recommendations.
All right.
They're asking for our recommendations, so I would recommend two things. Number one, we look at the design review process and the general plan, and two, we get a proposal of going 2-story plus.
Would you guys be interested in some design standards? I mean, the one there on Swanson, we have the rear slider of a building facing the right-of-way.
That would be part of the reason for design review.
Yeah,
Having
I
design
guess we're not
standards.
here today for that. We're here today for, like I said, looking at these specific districts and getting some direction on these districts. And then if you'd like to look looking at the general plan, we could do that as well. But today we're looking for basically those three things. Do you want us to look into setting a minimum density? Do you want us to look into requiring a minimum story height? And do you want us to look at bringing back some design standards for the buildings that are facing the right of way? And what I mean by that, so we could limit things like the rear door of the unit facing the right of way.
Jim, look behind you. Is it on your screen?
It's on my screen.
Somebody could face their garage door towards the right of way, or a string of garage doors with units above. Doesn't necessarily have to be we don't have to do a stoop or an entry to the unit or to the building off the right of way, but we could say you can't have a wall longer than 25 feet without an additional bump out. So things like that is what we're looking for as far as the building form go.
I think that everything you just mentioned is what we've been talking about. I think that I like to see some of those things and see what they look like on paper, and we could discuss them once we come back with that. Those three things would probably help alleviate some of this. Yeah, I saw this project here that we're looking at now, and I was like, wow, that's interesting when I first saw it going up. So, but yeah, those three things, the design standard. I mean, and I don't want to get too draconian, obviously, but we need to, we need to look at that. That's our agreed upon ultimate goal, is to utilize the 17 acres properly, and not worried that, oh, why we didn't do that properly. So yeah, I think that's a good start in the right direction.
Yeah. All right.
Thank you,
We can
Mr.
do that.
Tillman. Anybody else? Well, thank you, Mr. Morris.
All right, thank you. So we'll take away from this to put together some proposed changes and then come back to the Planning Commission for another discussion item.
Place to start.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you for the direction.
Okay. There are no more items on the agenda, so at this time I'll call to the public. If there's anybody in the audience that wishes to speak to the commission on any subject whatsoever, now is the time to do it. Please come forward, state your name for the record. Please understand that we may not respond.
Sure. Oh, there we go. Tiffany Wilson. So I just want to add to the last comment. I would just strongly urge that this is, like the staff mentioned, it's the most vibrant part of our town, right? It's where the activities take place. It's where people walk around on a Thursday night and grab a drink and dinner with their families. So if you take this area in any other town, they have more of the heights of residential and more. I would recommend, in my personal opinion, that you do have some sort of 400 square feet. And as large as somebody wants to go, I think you want to attract somebody who loves the idea of not owning a car and walking around and doing everything by that. While I understand we're not quite there, I think taking that limitation out of our town and not pushing towards that direction, or giving the ability to do that, garages and all those things, it just creates more, you take more away from the space. So I would just urge that we don't put too many limitations on maximum ability of what somebody can do with those. However, while personal property rights is definitely something near and dear to my heart, it does appear that the first story homes that are, or first story properties that are here, don't quite fit in with the surrounding area either. Thank you.
Appreciate your comments. Anybody else for call to the public? Hearing none, I'll go ahead and close the call to the public. Future meetings, Mr. Morris?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, thank you. We don't have any items for the March 2nd Planning Commission meeting, so the March 2nd meeting is canceled. The next regular scheduled meeting would be March 16th, and we'll let you know, send you a packet when that one's ready to go. That concludes my...
Okay, everybody, thank you for your participation. We are adjourned.